All right, welcome everyone to our Tuesday Weekly Connect. So, this week we are talking about stress. So, stress is actually, it's a huge topic and it is something that I'm super interested in because that's what I focus on. In my practice is on stress. And I always have a problem. I don't know if I want to use the word problem, but I guess I always find it hard to express just how big this topic is because I think we now live in this modern day world where everything has a potential. I mean, everything can potentially cause stress to us, right? And so stress is very broad, and we each come in with different levels of stress, different types of stress, and different perception to our stress. And so today I just want to give you I guess, a little introduction as to how I view stress and how it relates to health. And maybe there are some things that are really obvious to you, like, yes, I feel that. And there might be some other things that you're like, oh, I didn't consider that to be a stress, right? So, for instance, some of the things that I look into in my practice are external stresses that we live with that we may not even be aware of. And so a lot of people come to work with me because they have certain health issues, or that they just want to, even if there are no health issues, they might just want to come in because they need a little bit of guidance to live a bit better. They feel like they're not living to perhaps the healthiest in the healthiest way, and they need some support and guidance in that sense. So when we talk about health, we tend to focus on the external things. What I mean by this is, for instance, it's very easy for us to jump to, diet and nutrition, to exercise, and lifestyle changes, right? These things are definitely very important, and they do form the foundation or some of the pillars of good health, right? So you do want to have a good diet, you want to be moving, and you want to make sure that you are that you cultivate lifestyle or habits that are going to be positive or beneficial to your health. But then there are other things that perhaps are the stresses that we deal with every day that we may not think of as stresses because it's just been so normalized. Everybody are living this way, they are in contact with these kinds of things, and so it becomes normal. But I want to point out that just because everyone else is doing it, it doesn't make it healthy. So something that's common or normal actually is not normal for our bodies. We have not been evolved to live in this way. And what do I mean by living in this way? So for instance, just in our homes, there are many things in our homes that we use and that we don't really think about, right? I think people are getting a little bit more health conscious about the products that they're using. So for instance, cleaning products, personal care products, and being careful not to use toxic chemicals or pesticides and other things like that. So I think that's great, but then there are still many people who are not aware that there are harmful chemicals that are found in a lot of our conventional products that we use at home. But then on top of that, even for instance, the furniture that we use, the paint that was used in the house and things around the house, there are things that are off-gassing. There are things that may be leaching chemicals in ways that we are not aware of. Our Tupperware containers, the cookware that we cook with, all of these kinds of things could potentially cause stress in our bodies, and we may not notice it right away. But over time, these kinds of stresses, physical stresses to the body in ways of toxins or chemicals or others, could could build up and cause problems in the long term. And this might be years or decades down the track, right? But these are nonetheless things that we burden our bodies with. And then, of course, you have the food and what we eat, and that is very central to health. And our food has gotten so unnatural over the decades, and that a lot of the foods that we eat now are not recognizable probably by your, say, great grandmother. We don't have, or they didn't have the kinds of food that we have, and our bodies have not adapted to the kind of foods that we eat. And so learning to understand, how food is impacting our bodies, and the way that we eat and the types of food that we eat, how they all play a role to our health or stress. Because anything that we put in our bodies that our bodies have to process, foods that are not natural, and the body has to figure out a way to process it, neutralize it, and eliminate it. These are going to be stresses to the body as well. And we're going to get into food in another week. So I don't want to get too deep into that. But so these are just a few other things. And of course, there's sleep and there's exercise and all of that good stuff that we're also going to get into in, a couple of weeks from now. But so we may not think of it that, we're not, maybe when we think of stress, we may not automatically jump to these things. But everything that you do is going to add up. So, with the chemicals that you're exposed to, together with the food that you eat, together with, any lifestyle habits that you have that may be not optimal for health. And then, whether you're sleeping enough, whether you're moving enough, all of these things will, come together, and they all add stress to the body, right? So, these are what I call perhaps the external stresses that you might be experiencing that could be, causing stress. And the thing is, when we are stressed, our bodies react pretty much in the same way. Okay, not exactly the same. There are different situations that trigger slightly different responses, but we're speaking very simply and generally here. When our bodies are stressed, we switch on the fight or flight response, or the sympathetic nervous system. And when that is dominant in our system, many other biological or physiological processes occur in response to that. And how we've been designed is that we want to be in the opposing branch of the nervous system. So the parasympathetic nervous system, or the rest, digest, heal mode in our body. So we want to be, in rest and digest mode most of the time. And then we want to have the capacity to be able to switch into that fight or flight mode quickly when we're under stress, and then be able to switch that off quickly as well. And unfortunately, the way that we live right now, so we're just talking about the physical stresses or the external stresses that we maybe encounter. These are constant stresses on our bodies, right? And so all the external factors that I just mentioned alone can cause an increase in the activation of the fight or flight response. Now, then there are other stresses that we deal with that probably ones that you most or that you relate to better are the internal stresses that we create for ourselves. So, our emotions, right? Our mental stresses, things that we worry about, thoughts that run around in our heads, and bills we need to pay, and chores we need to do, and organizing the kids schedule, and your work, maybe if you're working, and all of these things cause use up mental energy and mental stress. And then all of these things again build up, and again, these are stresses that we cannot get away from. So most of the time, we tend to stay in the fight or flight mode, or that we are sort of leaning towards that branch of the nervous system much more than what our bodies have been adapted to do, or where it should be. And this is why over time we see a lot of symptoms, whether it's psychological or physical, that might manifest over time and eventually could turn into something more serious. Chronic inflammation is associated with that chronic stress, and chronic inflammation is linked to most, if not all, chronic illnesses that we see today. And so you can see how, stress might be coming to us, from all angles. And some of the times we're not even aware that that we're burdening our body with these kinds of stresses. There might be a few stresses that you're more, um, that are more obvious to you, and you focus your energy there. And then there are all the other things that are also affecting you, right? And so I don't want to paint a picture of doom and gloom here, but this is reality. We live in a world where it is very stressful. There are many things that are outside of our control, especially all the external stresses, especially if you want to continue to live in a city, right, where there's civilization. You're going to live in a stressful environment because what we've built up for ourselves is not natural. And anything that deviates from nature is going to cause some sort of stress in our bodies because we have not been adapted to live this way, right? Or have been evolved to live this way. But having said this, our bodies are also amazingly resourceful and and resilient as well. So imagine all of these stresses that we kind of put ourselves through. We're still, functioning. We're still alive, right? And we're still able to live, for the most part, relatively well, despite, if we really think about what we're actually doing out to our bodies, it's surprising that we're still functioning and continuing as we are. So knowing this and understanding that our bodies actually have an amazing capacity to heal, and understanding that we're living in a world where we are constantly putting more and more stress onto ourselves, and understand that these stresses can build up over time such that our bodies get to a point where it can no longer manage, if you like. And that's when we kind of see the disease and symptoms that are manifested. And so, you know, the wise thing to do, I would think, is that before you're showing symptoms, or even if you're showing symptoms, it's never too late to start making some changes in your lives to start to lessen the burden that you put on your body. And you doesn't mean that you have to change everything right away and make a complete 180 shift and change, or 360 shift and change, completely um, live in a way that you don't even recognize yourself. We're not asking you to do this, but having said this, there are things that are within your control that you can do for yourself that are going to significantly decrease the amount of stress that you feel, start to downregulate your nervous system, switch it back towards a parasympathetic nervous system, that heal, rest, and digest phase, so that your body can start to like I said, your body's really resourceful. So even if you don't remove all of the stresses, once you start to decrease some of the things that that remove some of the burden, it can start to find that extra energy on other things, such as healing, right? And so you'd be amazed how a couple of things or a couple of changes that you make, as long as you're able to do that consistently and be able to sustain it over the long term, so it becomes a lifelong, I don't even want to use the word habit. Like, I want it to become part of your life. That's just the way you live, right? When it becomes your lifestyle, then you're already going to find significant improvements, more energy, such that you might be able to make more changes as you go. And so I'm a big believer of, going at your own pace and doing what's realistic to you, so that you can make these sustainable long-term changes. But one step at a time. Like, there are no steps too small, right? As soon as you start to commit yourself, and it might just be mindset, even if nothing else changes, if even if you don't actually make or take a physical action towards something right away, just changing your mindset, understanding yourself in a new way, understanding your stress in a new way is already going to start, eventually, it's going to start affecting the actions that you will take and the decisions that you're going to make. So, so coming back to what are the things that we can do to de-stress? Well, I truly believe that, while I think it's super important to look at these external stresses that are affecting us, and addressing as many that you're comfortable with addressing. For instance, if it's something simple, if it's just about switching out some products, and so that and you think that's super doable, yeah, start doing some of the things that you can. But I wouldn't start to strive for the big, huge changes just yet, until we understand what it is that is important to you. Because underneath it all, we have this, in IRES teachings, we call this your heartfelt desire. We all have our own heartfelt desires. And it is this heartfelt desire, that inner longing, this this energy within you, that really drives all that you do in life. And so I think it's tremendously important for you to understand what it is that you live for. What do you perceive is your life purpose? What are you excited about? Excited about life, right? What drives you? Once we can tap into that and understand that, then we're going to have a much clearer idea. What are the changes in my lives are going to help me to live more in alignment with my heartfelt desire? And this includes your, lifestyle changes, that how can you support yourself to live in a healthier way that's in alignment with your heartfelt desire. And I think that is going to be how understanding that and practicing that is going to really help you to be successful in any goals you set, big or small. And so, especially with health goals that you set, these are not something that you want to just do for a short or in the short term, right? I think many of us have probably gone through some sort of, health program or diet or challenges or detoxes and whatnot. And why are we still looking to be healthier, right? It's because those things that we did in the past didn't stick with us, or it didn't resonate with us, it didn't work with us. So we're still looking for the answer or the solution. And I think that, first, that solution is already within you. Okay? And so finding your heartfelt desire, understanding what it is that you need, build that self-trust within yourself, and you're going to start to see things in a different way. And yeah, and I think that making changes from this place of your inner heartfelt desire is going to help you be much more successful in setting long-term lifelong changes that are going to be meaningful and helpful. All right, so I can go on forever. But I think it's a good time for me to stop here. If you do have any questions, shoot them over to me. You can comment below or you can write to me directly. Um, and yeah, so if you want to know anything a little bit more in detail about what I do and how I could support you, what kind of stresses that you might be under, I'm always happy to connect. So do reach out to me and I'll, point you in the right direction. But otherwise, I hope you enjoyed the training today, and I will see you guys back next week, Tuesday at 9 o'clock Pacific time. So take care, everyone.